This is a Fox News alert. I'm Marianne Rafferty, live in Los Angeles. Legendary actor, two-time Oscar winner and author Gene Hackman and his wife have died. They were found on Wednesday in their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The Santa Fe sheriff saying there's no immediate indication of foul play, but did not provide a cause of death or when the couple may have died. 95-year-old Hackman has lived in Santa Fe since the 1980s and married his wife, classical pianist Betsy Arakawa, in 1991. Hackman won numerous accolades, including 2 Academy Awards over the course of his long career. Among his many famous roles were Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle in 1971's The French Connection, for which he won Oscar for Best Actor, and Sheriff Little Bill Daggett in the 1992 Clint Eastwood film Unforgiven, for which he won the Best Supporting Actor award. Hackman also played Clyde's brother Buck Barrow in 1967's Bonnie and Clyde, an FBI agent investigating the murder of civil rights activists in Mississippi Burning in 1988, and who could forget Lex Luthor in several Superman movies in the 1970s and 80s. Again, if you're just joining us, legendary actor and Oscar winner Gene Hackman has died. He was found dead along with his wife and their dog inside his Santa Fe, New Mexico home. The Santa Fe sheriff says there's no immediate indication of foul play, but an investigation is ongoing.
We've got ones that can see. Welcome, everybody, to today's show. Hollywood actor Gene Hackman was found deceased along with his wife and his dog, and the police are reporting that no foul play is suspected. So people out there are a little bit suspicious about what could have happened to Gene. And I want to talk about this because we have the potential here for a major government psyop, which they've been planning for quite some time, all revolving around that flight log and that island that you're getting all your information from about those things directly from your own government. So Gene Hackman, for anyone that doesn't know, was 95 years old. His wife was 63. And he was a very famous Hollywood actor. He's known for films such as Enemy of the State, which is actually a film if people out there want to learn about the surveillance state that we're in. That movie revealed a lot about the NSA and spying on civilians. And of course, what eventually came after that with the Patriot Act, which was not a coincidence at all, which was very much part of the reason that so many people were sacrificed on that 11th day of September. So Gene Hackman, for starters, of course, like everybody in Hollywood, is a part of the club. You don't become famous. You don't win Oscars. You aren't put in magazines. You aren't crammed down people's throats. You're not a household name unless the government wants you to be. Remember, these actors in Hollywood are government assets. They are influencers. They're the ones who influence behavior. They're the ones who persuade people into accepting government agendas. And Gene Hackman has been on magazine covers and revealed, of course, like most of them do, who he works for and who he's a part of, right? Here's a picture of Gene on People magazine. You can see his arms folded across his chest, making the X symbol. He wasn't smiling for the picture saying, hey, it's cold out here on a 90-degree day in New Mexico or wherever he might have been in Hollywood, California. He wasn't shivering and they just snapped the shot. Of course, every picture that's taken for these magazines is strategically and deliberately done, but people don't think that far. People just assume that, hey, we're going to pick this pose, do this pose, right? They don't know that there's symbology behind the poses that they do in these magazine covers. So he's making the X symbol across his chest. This, of course, we see in Freemasonry. We've seen in the OTO with Aleister Crowley and the occult. This is the Osiris risen symbol. You will find almost every single celebrity out there. You can see these collages of them doing some type of symbol with the X across their chest. This, of course, is representative of the Antichrist and Osiris risen. It is part of a ritual in Freemasonry. You can see them crossing the X or making the X mark across their chest. And you could go on and on and on and find almost every single celebrity, if you want to, making this symbol. And it's not a coincidence. They were not just posing for magazines and suddenly got the shivers and decided to hug themselves. You could see it strategically an X mark across their chest. We've also seen Gene Hackman do the hand on the chin symbol, which is another known Freemasonic symbol where they pose on magazine covers doing this. Of course, they've trained the public out there again to think that these are all coincidental, that he's just pondering something. And then they took the picture for Vogue, right? And we've seen Freemasons like Michael Richards do this pose even on their Freemasonic magazines that they pass around on one another using the thumb on his chin. Johnny Depp has done it various times. Leonardo DiCaprio, all people have exposed as obviously being a part of the club. Steve Jobs. So those are just a few of the images of Gene Hackman doing these poses. So now I want to talk about the actual psyop that could come from this. Because if you haven't heard, the government has been feeding people conspiracies, right? The only reason you know about Jeffrey Epps is because the government told you about Jeffrey Epps. Everything on the news is put there by design. They wouldn't put it out there unless they wanted you to know about it. If something organically was discovered by people like us, kind of like that pizza place in Washington, D.C., what the media does and would do, even on Fox media and liberal media, is take that notion and say it's a dangerous conspiracy, and then do everything they can to drown it out and bury the story. They would not give it legs to run with. Of course, in the case of Jeffrey, who conveniently popped up right around the time of that pizza parlor being discovered, Jeffrey, we've been getting fed information about Jeffrey. And of course, you wouldn't know who he was unless the government wanted you to know. It wouldn't have made the news unless the government wanted it to make the news. There's many people involved in many disgusting, disturbing acts that if they were to actually say that they would expose the deep state, or they would expose these politicians, or they would expose these celebrities, there would never be a trial for it. They would be whacked. Nobody would ever find out about it. They would disappear like Jimmy Hoffa disappeared. But of course, we got all of the charade with Jeffrey, because what it did was it built up a psychosis in people's mind that he was going to expose all of these people that were involved in all of these acts. And then, of course, when he's in his jail cell, conveniently they went after him, and that fed into the psyop even more. People like Tucker Carlson and all of these alt-right media, personalities coming out and talking about he was going to say something that they didn't want anyone out there to hear, so they whacked him, right? We're seeing the same exact thing with Puff Daddy. These are government-created psychological operations. It doesn't mean that these specific people are not involved in the things that they're claimed to be involved in. It means that it's being force-fed to you. It means that the media is talking about it because they want you to hear it. Remember, the news is there to manipulate you. It's there to control you. It's not there to inform you. They would never need to ever explain about any of these people or any of the acts that they're involved in. They would just disappear because they're in a network together. They're in a brotherhood together. They wouldn't expose one another. If somebody was coming out to expose the other person, they would Mozart them. They would just put them down. They would just have some type of bizarre, mysterious disappearance or death like Mozart had, which, again, I covered on the website. So for those of you that don't know, this entire thing, of course, is a big thing for the MAGA alt-right group who believe that they're quote-unquote red pill, that Donald Trump is playing 5D chess. They don't ask where the origins of this story came from. The fact that it's covered on Fox, the fact that it's covered in liberal media, that they're gaslighting them and working them into a psychosis over whether or not this information's ever going to be leaked. They believe it. They don't ask questions about how it's being fed to them or why. Well, here's where we get the psyop with Gene Hackman and the potential tie-in, okay? For starters, Gene Hackman lived in Santa Fe. That's where he was found dead in his New Mexico home. Right up the road, conveniently, happened to be one of Jeffrey's ranches called the Zorro Ranch. Now, how do these connect to one another? Well, if you didn't hear this clip on controlled media Fox News, listen closely, because the people out there who think that they're awake still think that they're getting real news from Fox News, and Fox News is still trying to give them actual information. It's incredible that when the news they discuss is something that appeals to them, then they believe the news. But when it's not, they call it fake news. All of the news is fake and controlled. Here they are, baiting these people in the alt-right, in MAGA, into thinking that they're going to give them the facts. They're going to release the flight logs, right? All of the information is coming out right now as we speak. They claim, of course. Listen.
A lot of people are wondering, because you said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk, is when can we see them and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. But other than that, I think tomorrow, the personal information of victims. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah, what you're going to see hopefully tomorrow is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well,
along with his co-defendant.
Absolutely, and he had help.
So, of course, that aired on Control Media. That is Jesse Waters, who is a government operative, who, again, works on Fox News. So what I'm getting at here is that now you're starting to hear about how these celebrities, because, again, they said Gene Hackman didn't have any foul play there. So, in other words, it didn't look like there was any bullets. Somebody didn't break in and do something. They weren't beaten. And it looks like maybe somebody pulled the gas. Or maybe Gene did. Maybe something like that happened, right? So the theories now are that all these celebrities are going to start dropping like flies, right? Because Q has told everybody out there that there was going to be a long list of people who had themselves accidents, who just all of a sudden conveniently perish off the face of the earth because they're afraid that their names are going to come out and that their families are going to be shamed, and they rather leave the earth than face up to the consequences. This is the psyop that the government's created. So what we're seeing is all the alt-right, all the conservatives are cheering. They're happy. They're excited. They're not thinking for a second that the government has them stuck in an endless rabbit hole where they're just going to continue to feed them all of this information that they think that they're getting, I guess, out of thin air when it's coming directly from the government. And they think that they're going to save children and solve the problem by cheering for Trump and cheering for the politicians to do something about it. Again, and this removes the power from the people. When you create an endless rabbit hole like this and then you're told that things are getting done, it makes people sit back with their hands underneath their butt, and they sit back and they wait for Trump, and they wait for Musk, and they wait for Doge, and they wait for all these things that they voted for to handle the problem, right? And the government created this psyop because, again, when all that information was coming out about the pizza place, people were going to the pizza place. People were starting to investigate. People were getting too close to actually figuring out what was going on. And the fear was that the people would rise up if they figured out that it was the left, it was the right, it was all people of all different walks of life, all rich and famous celebrities, all rich and famous musicians, all rich and famous politicians, Democrats, Republicans, all involved in this very suspicious area in Washington, D.C. that's centered around a pizza place. So the government obviously pivoted from there. And what did they do? They suddenly gave you the face of Jeffrey, who is not dead, who is living his life somewhere else. And everybody stopped looking at the pizza place and started looking at Jeffrey. And then little by little, these things that they think are called Q leaks were coming out. And instead of saying, hey, maybe the government would whack this guy Q, right? If they found out, oh, they can't find out who he is, right? They can find out who you are, who I am, who anybody is walking the earth and end them in a split second. But somehow this guy on the inside, who some believe is John F. Kennedy Jr., I mean, all this stuff is unbelievable. How ridiculous it is that people believe it. It's like living in a massive psychosis where you're actually thinking in your mind that you're getting this information organically, but it's all being given to you by the government. You're never questioning how people like Q aren't found, how they're not caught, how the government doesn't go after them, right? They're on the inside. They think that these people, with all the crazy stuff that we see going on, with all the control the government has we see going on, they still think organically their vote counts and that change is coming from people like Trump, and that the government couldn't go and find the person behind Q if they wanted to, right? This is a psychosis. So this is something that's being fed to the public. Everybody knows Jeffrey's name. He's a household name. Done by design. Does everybody know the name of the guy who owned the pizza place? No, they do not. Do people talk about other rings like the McMartin scandal? No, they do not. They talk about this one thing, and they talk about now Diddy. They're being fed these. They're finding out about celebrities' involvement. Who goes to this party? Who goes to that party? This is part of the brotherhood. In these secret societies, they don't care if their name gets slandered. It is in their oaths that they do whatever they are told to do. That means if somebody like Diddy is asked to suddenly run his name through the mud and he's going to go into jail, and everybody out there thinks he's actually in prison, which is laughable. He is not. None of them end up in prison. They go away on long, permanent vacations. They get a little plastic surgery. They wear masks. Nobody identifies them anymore once they go off the map. And then they give you the charade out on the news. This is the person connected to Diddy. This is the person connected to Jeffrey. Who's on this list? Who's on that list? And all it does is prevent actual revolutions, the people from actually taking on vigilante private justice against people who commit these atrocities, these these acts that are so abominable. I mean, they're unimaginable, the things that they actually commit. So what we're seeing now with Gene Hackman could very well be the very beginning of a psyop here, where you start hearing about celebrities with mysterious deaths, because this is what everybody out there is saying. And that's why I'm covering the topic. Because as soon as I saw Gene Hackman died, yes, I knew Gene Hackman was a Freemason. Yes, I knew his connection, obviously, in Hollywood to the intel agencies, and of course, rubbing shoulders with the presidents in the 80s and the 90s, all of them connected, right, in Hollywood to the White House. And nobody out there is suspicious about how they're actually government operatives and how the Tavistock Institute works and how social engineering on the masses work. They don't understand at all. They think that these people went to Juilliard school. They read off of a script. They were so talented. They were put in these movies, and everybody out there drools over them and listens to them interview on TV talk shows, and they love them because they're so talented, right? That's part of the psychosis. So this is very obvious that Gene Hackman is one of them. But when you look at the psychosis that's out there and you say, okay, what are they talking about? Well, he died in his Santa Fe home in New Mexico, and who had a home right up the road? Jeffrey did. And what's supposed to be released in the next couple of days? They're going to give us information on these logs, right? So if they do put Gene Hackman's name on this list, watch how these people run with this story and how this psychosis goes. Now, Gene is 95, so Gene could very well be dead, could have been dead, or could very well have been sent somewhere else because Gene Hackman's one of them. So if Gene Hackman wanted to get out of the public eye, or they told Gene Hackman, hey, you're going to spend the rest of your days in Rome or somewhere where nobody will identify you, because you can't even identify Gene Hackman anymore, what he looks like compared to what he looked like in the 70s and 80s, then that's what they would do. And they would tell you that Gene's on the list, and then all these people suddenly feel like they've gotten something. Oh, they were going to expose him, and Q was right, and now these people are going to start dropping like flies. These celebrities are going to start running, right? And think about what this does. Think about what would have occurred, let's say in the 1700s, the 1800s, okay? What would have occurred if you found out that there's all these rich people in your town, and suddenly they were involved with your kids and other people's kids? Do you think everybody would have sat back and ran to the government and said, can you investigate them? Could somebody look into what they're doing? My kid was missing, and I last seen with this guy, and nobody's done anything about it, and all these other kids are missing, and these guys are real creepy, and they're rich, and they have these underground little bunkers underneath their churches that they do rituals in when they're worshiping the bad. I mean, people would say, okay, we're not going to ask for help here. We're going to take matters into our own hands, and that's what civilians always did. They took matters in their own hands. Our generations have been trained, of course, to run to Big Brother, to run to the government, hope that the government's going to do something about it. So the more you see the government not act, and the more you see these stories come out and nothing be done, that would lead to people actually starting a revolution, right? Because you see how into these stories everybody is, right? They're into these stories because they want justice for these children. It's very understandable. I understand 100%. But what they don't seem to understand is that they only know of the existence of a flight log is because the government told you the existence of a flight log. Where do you think the information came from? Fed through Q, told to you so that you would obsess over a list, want it released from Donald Trump instead of any people actually acting on their own and stopping this absolute, something that would unite the left and the right? Something that should unite everybody, right? What's also interesting to note, on top of how this should unite people as, with a common goal of protecting children, right? This isn't a political thing, right? What should unite people about everything on this list is all the pictures of Donald Trump with him, right? But those pictures of Donald Trump being on planes, being at parties, talking to him on film, they don't seem to bother the MAGA crowd. They don't seem to say, hey, that's really, really, okay, this is a guy that we think is responsible for the biggest ring in the history of the world. And our president, our golden god, is rubbing shoulders with him every chance he possibly gets. It should think it would make them say, hey, guilt by association here. I mean, it's not like it's one picture. And there's dozens of pictures with Trump and Diddy and Puff Daddy. Dozens. And he's talked about him and how great Puff Daddy is. He's one of his favorite people he's ever met, right? But they ignore that because they don't want to believe that. They'd rather not look at the pictures and believe the connection between the two, but believe an actual piece of paper that they're told is a flight log that, well, it was subpoenaed. And, they like as if that means that it's some type of factual information. It's being fed to you by the media. The entire story is. So people should look at this stuff with Jeffrey and Trump and they say, you know what? I'm not taking a political allegiance to this entire story, right? I want justice for children. I want these corrupt people in prison. And what is the origins of all these acts revolving around children? Then they start learning, well, the OTO and Aleister Crowley and how these Satanists feast off of these youngsters, right? But instead, what do? They sit back and they wait for this stuff to come out, not questioning at all if it's fed to them by the government themselves. So Gene Hackman is dead. There is no signs of foul play. His wife as well and his dog, right? Which tells you it's probably something with gas in the house, carbon monoxide maybe, right? But the story that could potentially come out of this is that revolving around the Q stuff. Because all of these actors, all of these famous people, remember with the Me Too movement, how many celebrities just bowed down? They were called out and we were told that they were doing acts where they're flirting with women. Oh my goodness, the worst crime in the world, right? And all of them bowed down. Matt Lauer, how many celebrities came out and ended their own careers and said, I'm going to resign because I hit on a woman. I tried to kiss a girl 20 years ago, right? Oh, okay. So they all stepped down. That's because they were told to step down. None of them fought it. None of them said these accusations are ridiculous. None of them said, I hit on a woman or whatever. No, they all bowed down because they were creating a movement. That was part of a psychological operation, right? They were told this is what you're going to do. You're going to be given money the rest of your life. You're just not going to be famous anymore. Matt Lauer goes, great. I don't have to work I don't have to get up and go into an office anymore and sit on TV and, do what I was trained at Tavistock to do, which is mind control people. Okay, fine. I'll do that. All right. Same thing here. These celebrities do not care if their names are on lists. You're not going to see Tom, what are they going to do? Throw Tom Hanks in jail? You think that's really going to occur? These people are just going to continue to call for it. And the more that they get little tidbits, little information about things being done to these celebrities, or at least, they're going to expose them. It's coming soon. It's going to happen, right? Remember how many years? 4 years people waited for the swamp to be drained. In 2016, the big thing going into Trump coming in office was all the pizza stuff. He was going to drain it. He was going to put Hillary in jail. Nothing happened. They waited. They begged for 4 years. Now we're 10 years later. Are they begging for it now? Well, they're begging for this instead. They forgot about that and how they never got any justice done there, any investigations done into the pizza place, right? Because the media came out, left and right, and made it sound like a crazy, complete conspiracy about a pizza place because they kept using sentences like pizza parlor, underground bunker, and people were like, that sounds insane because they were thinking in their heads of a pizza place in their town, and maybe there being something underneath there. Like, that's a ridiculous notion, using a pizza place for this, right? Not looking at the actual evidence, the Instagram posts of all these disturbing pictures with children, or how they were in the White House playing ping pong in the middle of the night with Barry Soetoro. None of that stuff, where anybody out there would have called for at least an investigation, right? The media told you it was a joke, it was crazy, and then they fed you this, and people are still waiting for info. So they're going to give you little stories, right? And everyone's want to see Hollywood torn down. You notice the cringy conservative actors out there, like Kevin Sorbo, I think his name is, who I think he played like Hercules or something. These cringy Republican actors who call on, let's go after these Hollywood celebrities, right? Let's go after the Oscars, right? And they just work everybody into a hysteria. So we'll see if a psyop comes out of this with Gene Hackman. Of course, Gene Hackman, another member of the club. And watch where this story goes now. Because now these people have been calling for justice. They're going to get fed fake justice and fake information. And they're going to continue to go down a rabbit hole created by their own government, fed to them by their own government and media. Because again, notice how the conservative media brings up Jeffrey all the time, and the liberal media. They both bring him up. You would never know his name. You never would have known his existence unless they wanted you to. It's a patsy. It's a very easy operation to figure out. Just look at the news and say, well, they want me to know about this, right, for a reason. We think they want to inform you about Jeff. That's why they're like, we got to let the public know. It's their right to know. The same people who tried to get poison in you 4 years ago and told you if you didn't have poison in your body that you wouldn't be able to work again. They shamed people into poisoning themselves who are no longer here. Right? Oh, but they want to inform you about a flight log that has all these politicians and celebrities on it. It's part of an agenda. Everything on the news is manufactured. Every story. It's there to manipulate you. It's there to distract you. And it's there to lead you down rabbit holes that don't really actually exist. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.